We may have to.
Is there anyone there with us? Did you hear that? Can you tell us your name? Did you live here? Did you die here? Do you want to take a trip?
Hello, and welcome to another Strange Journeys podcast. Again, I'm Tim Shepard, your co-host, filling in for Tom Rouse. He says he's going to be joining us here shortly. We'll find out. With me today are Lewis Powell IV, and Andrea and John are right below us here as well. So it's great to have them back with us today as well. I'm over here doing like 40 billion things trying to figure out what all he's done here in the background, which is not a bad thing at all. We do want to remind you that first and foremost, we do provide this for you, the viewers, or in this case, the watchers, for your entertainment. We are not by any means and do not claim to be scholars or experts in any of the topics that we cover. We are simply enthusiasts and storytellers who have fun with these topics while doing our best to respect individual beliefs. And please remember that we are live and nothing is rehearsed and end it out later. What you see is what you get. And if you remember last week's show, you'll probably understand where that is. We'll start with just some ET facts. Um, let's start with Lewis. Can you tell us about your first or most compelling ghost hunt?
Well, my very first investigation was at Ripavilla Plantation in Spring Hill, Tennessee. And this is a historic home that was built early 19th century. It was the site of a Civil War battle, the Battle of Spring Hill. And during the course of the Civil War, the house was actually used several times as generals' headquarters for generals of both sides. Following the battle, the house became a field hospital, and you still see blood stains on the floors of many of the rooms. But I went to investigate this house as part of a public investigation, and it was really phenomenal. Probably our most interesting experience happened when they had gathered all of the investigators in a building at the back of the property. And this is just a modern multi-purpose building, and they had really phenomenal activity there. But as we're all sitting there in the dark, they have about 20 investigators all sitting in a circle in the middle of this room. And there was a section of the circle where there were no people sitting, and it was kind of an empty area of the room. And we had a chair set up in the very center of the room with a ball sitting on top of it. Our lead investigator says, "All right, if you will move the ball, we will all leave." And not 2 seconds after he said that, everyone in the room hears this voice speak up from this area where no one was sitting, and this little tiny man's voice says, all of you? And so this gasp goes up through the room, and we, did as promised. We all, after the shock had worn off, we all left the room and discovered that we captured it on audio. And it was a perfectly clear voice, and it was a really phenomenal experience for me. It was actually the first time I have ever actually gone out looking for something and actually found it.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yes, it was a phenomenal experience.
Sounds like it. That's some place that I would think I would enjoy investigating just because of the history of it,
Oh,
especially
yes.
with with where it is. How about you, John? Anything that you'd like to tell us about?
I'm still waiting for that baffling experience because I tend to be the null zone. So I enjoy all of the investigations we go on, and I am the guy that is always trying to debunk whatever anyone else has seen or experienced. But they always experience these things when I'm not right there around them. So I'm still waiting for that killer experience. There's some things that I can't explain as far as lights. Usually anything I've seen has to do with lights. We had just talked about the reformatory, going to the reformatory and seeing a light descend from the ceiling about 3 or 4 feet and not being able to recreate it. It was hard to, we both saw it and we weren't able to recreate it through any means or anything like that. So it was something that made an impression, but was so quick and so fleeting. And so we didn't have any kind of data or record of it. So it's easy to dismiss. It's easy to dismiss because, well, it's easy for me to dismiss. I started thinking, did my brain play tricks on it? Yeah, maybe I didn't really see it. Maybe it was the power. I don't know. It's the power of suggestion. It's a psychic thing. So
you're giving me way more credit.
So I'm still waiting for that killer experience. But as far as the actual experience of investigation and things like that, I always enjoy going to all of these different places, learning about the history, learning about the people that lived there, learning about the lives that were involved in that and everything like that. And then just there's something about getting the free range of being able to go and explore those spaces, especially basements, attics, things like that. Getting to see kind of behind the curtain and seeing what makes a building or a place tick, the real life of that place. I've always enjoyed that. So
I completely understand that, and I get I'm going to be skeptical part too. What's real, what's not? So doing tours, as I do and doing ghost hunts with them, the people are like, oh well, this happened. Yeah, but nobody else noticed. Did it actually happen? Oh, I had a feeling. Well, what does that mean?
yeah, I like to collect stuff like Lewis was talking about, having captured it on the audio. It's something like that, something that you experience firsthand, and then you have the data that you can go back and look at and reference. That makes a real experience for me, is having something like that. Now I have experiences. Obviously, you guys have seen our photo quite a few times of something like that. That's something that was just absolutely shocking, being there and seeing that and experiencing that. But I didn't really consider that an investigation per se. That was, we were out, we were taking pictures, we were enjoying the historical tour type thing, and that happened. So
What about you, Andrea? Anything you want to share?
It's really, I think, like, for somebody that has had like multiple experiences, like before even doing investigations, it's kind of really hard to pinpoint that like one time, that like really awesome moment. But for me, I think like out of all of them, my favorite one is the photograph that we got at Waynesville at the location of the 1879 axe murder, where 3 women were bludgeoned to death, axed to death by one of the lady's stepsons, and nobody would ever stay in that house. The house, you know, people would complain about the smell and the odor of the house. It took 5 days before their bodies were discovered. And by that time, rats had already had their way with them. So, you know, just the whole atmosphere of that house was always heavy, no matter who lived there. And then coincidentally, it caught on fire in the 750s and 1950s. And then like this anathema of a stucco house was put in its place. You know, you have all these gorgeous, like 1800s, early 1900s homes up and down the street. And then boom, this blue stucco house. It's like a sore thumb. You know, but it still had the same reaction. People they couldn't keep businesses in it. They couldn't keep a home in it. And so, you know, we went and we had our K2 meters and we were looking around and not really getting any spikes. And then I said, I want to take your picture. Let me take your picture. And I took 3 photographs in a row. And that middle one, that second photograph, right at the corner peak of the house, is that, you know, ectoplasmatic looking blob, you know, and it's very bright and you can see tentacles coming out of it. It's my favorite photograph because you really can't, nobody was smoking. There was nothing, the temperatures weren't cool enough to cause any, you know, mist in the air, no steam. The house was vacant at the time. So electricity isn't it, you know, St. Elmo's fire isn't an option. It really was something, and it looks like it's crawling onto the roof, and there's other orbs that are kind of present in that area. So that's my favorite one because I have photographic evidence. I have a witness, you know, that knows that I wasn't doing anything to fake the photograph. And it's my favorite. It's the one that when I show people, I always get the, ooh, that's so cool. And I'm like, I know, right?
It's the favorite one because it's the only one that I haven't gone, well, I mean, there was no, well, because I was like, wow, okay.
We need to leave. We need to leave now.
Right.
So that's my favorite one.
Right. And I understand that because like you, it's hard to pinpoint just that first one or the first experience where it's like, oh, this is really happening, you know. Yeah. So I get that completely. It's like, when did this really happen? I know for me, a few years ago during a tour, I had a great experience. We used to do ghost hunts along Kansas Avenue, which is part of where I do tours at today. And we have communicated for years with a ghost by the name of Benjamin Jonathan. And we're actually on the location of where his gravesite was. That's going to sound weird because we're on a city street. In fact, it's a main portion of downtown Topeka. But in 1857, they moved the original graveyard from where it sat to another mile down the road, so because they wanted to put in they wanted the downtown area to join us. Tom is joining us here on the side here, as y'all can see. He's telling me to cut and not tell anybody that he's over there at the moment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. I was saying my head was cut off.
That's
So
not a problem at all.
We're set up in the hotel room here, so I'm trying to get this. Yeah, see if that works better. Yeah. All right.
Now, Benjamin loves to interact with our guests, especially with dowsing rods. It'll be like, can you touch the people with the dowsing rods? He will spin them backwards to hit them in the shoulders on a regular basis. Can you spin them backwards and hit their shoulders? And he'll do it all the time on camera. And it'll be like, can you do 2 people? Can you do 3 people? Can you do everybody in the group? And he'll do everybody in the group. So he does it on command. With you can have 20 people standing there and everybody's getting hit with dowsing rods all of a sudden. But I did that tour one night with a group, and the very next night they were in Noto in North Topeka with me. And we happened to be at another location. Everybody was using ghost radars, or I've got the SV Spirit Boxes or Spirit Boxes as an app that I let the guests use. And we kept hearing somebody saying something to us, and the name kept coming across, Benjamin, I'm here. And finally, we just started talking to him, and it's like, Benjamin, are you here with us on the opposite side of the river? We're now, a mile and a half from where we normally see him. And he says, yes. Um, and it was like, well, why are you here? This is home. And I mean, he was very clear on the boxes. And I've got like 20 guests sitting there going, wow, this is really cool. Same group from the night before. Now he's appearing on the opposite side of the river. When I went back and did the research, his family farm sat on the land we were on in North Topeka. He was buried on the south side of the river, and the farm was on the north side of the river. So it's like, wow, this is really cool to have happen. We were sharing experiences, Tom, with
Okay, I was trying to keep up and get everything loaded in. I had to use my work phone to get into the outline. So,
right.
Just to give y'all a quick update, I'm not at liberty to share all the details, but just know that I've had a medical emergency with my son. We are in Jackson, Tennessee. And yes, I've been in contact with Tommy. And because he's about 45 minutes to the east of where we're at. But we're here taking care of my son. And it's been very tiring. And we've been here since Sunday. And I had just started working on the show because I usually use my weekend before the show to try to get all the details done. Hey, John. Which I want to say it is so good to see you guys again. I've missed y'all. This has been a very tough time for Lynn and I, and my son is doing better. But we don't know what the end of the road is yet. We're here until we're not needed anymore. So that's where I'm at on that. And I thank y'all, everybody, for their love and support. It's been awesome, and we appreciate everything. I'm kind of limited because, as a matter of fact, when we were kind of rushing out the door Sunday night, Lynn said, "Do you want to bring the laptop?" And I was like, "Well, this is not a vacation. We're not going to be,
Right.
having much downtime." But it turns out we could have used it. I could, because they only allow 2 people in the room at a time, so we've had to rotate. So there's been a lot of downtime, more than we expected. But I mean, this is my first show back since going on vacation, and I know we were right in the middle of ET facts, but and I'll just share a real quick one from one of my first investigations. We're investigating a large cemetery. I mean, this place was huge, massive. And we were in one of the mausoleums, and somebody had, the group had just purchased a spirit box, and it's sitting there scanning, running through all the channels. And there's about 7 or 8 of us standing around listening to it. And then it stops and clears a bell, and everybody heard it. It said, "Tom did it." And everybody looks at me. So
Nice.
we're like, I was like, "Well, I probably did, but I don't remember." And another strange thing that happened that night, I had a K2 meter and was going. Now, these mausoleums, they're like little wings off of a center building, and in those wings, they actually have bodies in the walls. So each little square on the wall is a casket stuck in there, and you can go by and it has little plaques. And I was following the K2 meter, and I could go up to a light switch. My phone fell. Yeah, I'm having to use my phone, folks. Sorry. It buzzed and fell. But I'm running the K2 meter, and I get up to a light switch, and it pings out. And I can follow the electrical lines through the floor. Now, for some reason, about halfway through one of the walls and about 6 foot up, this thing was pinging. I mean, pinging out to the red. But there shouldn't be anything there but bodies. should be no electrical lines whatsoever. But we had an electromagnetic surge right in the middle of the wall. Like I said, it had to have been about 4 or 5 bodies up and about 7 or 8 bodies in with bodies on the other side. So there was no reason for any electrical lines to be running through the bodies. So that was one of my first. But I've watched both of the last 2 shows, and I want you to know, guys, that was awesome. I know Tim got stuck doing one by himself on the families that killed together.
Right.
But
No, it wasn't that bad.
it wasn't that bad at all.
Tim's
I
used to
mean,
talking to himself, right?
What was that, John?
I said Tim is used to talking to himself, right?
Right.
There's that. There's that. But now normally we just talk about the past show, but because I've been out for the past 2 shows, I wanted to talk over that one. Tim, one of those families is reported to have killed up to 200 people.
The Bloody Benders, you're talking about at this point, if the graveyard in California is actually a murder graveyard, which is part of what they're looking into, you're looking at somewhere between about 200 to 300 people in their lifetimes. I know that in recent years they have found some. They know that John Bender Jr. is buried in Minnesota. That his body was excavated from a grave a few years ago, and the DNA was tested against the Flickinger family, who are direct descendants of Katie Bender, the daughter. And so the DNA lines up enough that they think that it's him. He would have been 6'7". He was a massive man, in the 1870s. So this is one of the reasons why they think it's him. But yeah, up to if you're talking between 200 and 300 people, that's a huge number of murders.
Good Lord, that just blew me away when I heard all that. I mean, these guys, yeah, that's a full-time job.
Right.
Killing folks. Jeez.
Right.
Well, guys, if you haven't seen that show, I mean, like I said, it is just him, but he throws some facts out there that will blow your mind, shocking about these families that just, I mean, they had to have been psychotic. And
right.
What do they call that? In the criminal world, my mind's going blank. Somebody that just kills with no
Serial killer.
Well,
psychopaths, serial killers and psychopaths. Some of your sociopaths,
sociopaths. That's what I was looking for.
Right.
They just have no compunction whatsoever. And then the Bridgewater Triangle. I love that shows, and even though y'all got hung up on puckwudgies.
Gotta catch them all. Yeah. I want to make a shirt that says Puckwudgie and then has like all these little different Puckwudgies like popping out like the Pokemon logo. And it just says gotta catch them all. I would totally sport that shirt. So I would wear it.
Me of the fairy show with Elizabeth Parker. These things could possibly fall under the heading of a fairy or the little people. I think Lewis even mentioned something to that effect, that these may be akin to the little people from the Indians,
Right.
That, I think you mentioned this.
North American leprechauns.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember when you said that, Andrea, I remember the picture you brought us when we were doing that, when we were talking about the stick man. And when I thought back to that picture when I was thinking about puckwudgies, because it was like they were disguising themselves with tree limbs and different things.
Right.
I think there's a lot more out there than what we, are aware of when it comes to the fairy world, so to say. I think and there's a lot of crossovers, and I think there's definitely more to it.
Yeah, and we just scratched the surface on the fairy show, and then I mean, from what I saw in Bridgewater, you guys just barely scratched the surface there.
There's so much more And even as I continue to research that area, and as I'm watching, I watch lots of paranormal shows on like Discovery Plus and things. And as I'm watching these, I'm like, wait, here's another one from that one. We better lump that one in too, So
Yeah.
I think we've got at least one or two more episodes just of the Bridgewater Triangle.
Well, yeah, and then the tie-in to Lizzie Borden
Right.
that Lewis brought in.
Right.
I didn't know that. I had not stopped and looked at a map,
Right.
and Lizzie Borden house falls in there. I mean,
Right.
there was just so much there, and the what they call it, I can't pronounce it, the rock, the
Dighton Rock.
The Dighton Rock. Yeah.
Dighton Rock.
I had seen that talked about on America Unearthed with oh crap, I just went back. What was his name? The geologist,
Right.
Scott Walter.
Right. That's his name.
And he had talked about that rock. And the show that we watched, the rock had been moved. Somebody called him and said, "Hey, we moved the rock," and he didn't know where it had gone. But according to you guys on the show last week, they've actually put it in a building.
It's inside of a building. It's actually only sitting 100 yards from where it was. You have to understand that thing weighs 40 tons. It is a massive boulder that they moved. So they didn't move it very far. All they were trying to do is make sure that the pictographs that are on there could be maintained. So that's why they pulled it up and out of the river and moved it off to the side. And they put a building around it. I've been in contact with the museum director there, asking her to send me a copy of a picture of the Ark of what they believe is the Ark of the Covenant that is on there. Because the picture I showed 2 weeks ago, come to find out, is the one from the Painted Desert, out there. And the location I was off on, she actually sent me a photo of where there's a circle around that one. It's one, though, that they've never done a chalk outline around. So she said it's going to be hard to get a picture of it because of the chalk outlines around everything else on it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's awesome. I hope they can come through on that and get us something. We might have to do a show just on that rock.
Right.
But I was already thinking about, since we talked about the Bridgewater Triangle, that we could do Triangle 2 and revisit Bermuda Triangle stories, or Triangle 3 and go up to the Alaska Triangle. I mean, and then what's the triangle out in the South Pacific? And we got more triangles.
Right.
All right.
Some of these triangles in person.
Yes.
Do
All
it
right.
on location.
Yes. All right. If you're watching on YouTube, we certainly appreciate it. Tim, if you can get us, I'm trying to find it on my phone. It's hard to get to. Yes, please like, subscribe, sign up for notifications. And I got an email this past week from YouTube saying, if we want more subscribers, we got to do this more often. So we may come back later and do it again. I don't know. Folks, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just fumbling through all this and having fun while I do it. And especially now, we are in a place where we really need your help, and Patreon is more vital to us now than ever, because this emergency has put us in a little bit of a bind, and I'm not going to sit here and whine and cry and beg for charity. We want to put these shows out for you, and we hope you enjoy them, and we would love for you to help support us through Patreon. You got several different levels to choose from, and you get cool swag after about 3 months of doing it. Finally got the stickers where they're cool now. The first ones were just little beady. I mean, they were little small things. I'm like, what's the point? We got some decent ones now. Uh, let's see. I did not have a chance to make, because y'all know when I normally do the show, I do a strange sightings video and I do an intro to the show. I didn't have time to get those, but I'm not sitting over here crying. So we're going to go on anyway. Tim, did you get a chance to watch the video I uploaded?
I have not watched this yet, so we'll watch it together, and then we'll
Okay,
make some
let me
comments
set it
once we
up.
come to the end of it.
Let me set it up, and we'll talk about it after we play it. This is a friend of mine. They live east of Nashville. I just moved there a couple years ago. The husband plays the guitar and was in a band. I played on stage with him a lot, and his wife was shooting this video. Now, here's the thing. This is an orb video. I'll tell you straight up. It's an orb video, okay? So just to give you a heads up. But here's the thing. She would get somebody else to video with their phone, no orbs. Same place, same location, sitting in her bed. She'd have somebody right beside her. You take video. That person wouldn't get orbs. She would shoot with her phone, she'd get orbs. She would pass her phone to her friend or to her husband, and they would use her phone to shoot video, no orbs. It only happened when my friend was holding the phone in video. And this one's pretty cool. Honestly, she sent me about 4 or 5, and I've got one here, which is my favorite one, but you'll see why in a second. So, Tim, go ahead and play that.
Hey, I was just checking to see if y'all were in here. Well, y'all are with me. Look at y'all. Just sitting here by myself, and I didn't think you'd be in here, but you are. Wow. What are y'all doing? Are you
Oh, my mic
protecting
is muted.
me?
There goes
Wow.
another one.
This is
All right, there's
amazing.
one coming up here.
Yep,
Look at
hey.
that. Comes right up to the camera. Did you
I'm
see
all
that?
good. Why don't you go to take a break and go night-night? Thank you for protecting us, though.
There goes another one.
Wow. Y'all are very active little critters tonight, aren't you? Yeah, I see ya. All right, I'm going to sleep, okay? Y'all need to take a break and go to sleep, too. Good night, my little fairy friends.
Zip another one right as it ended out.
Right.
Did you see that one about halfway through? It comes right up to the camera and then goes off.
Right.
I've never seen an orb do that.
What does Elizabeth think? Did you send it to Elizabeth?
Yes, I did. And Elizabeth is on board with. Well, let's just put it this way. My friend believes they are fairies and house fairies, and Elizabeth is on board with that. She basically refrained from giving any other insight. She said, "If your friend believes that's fairies, then I'm right in there with her," which I appreciated. But the unique thing here, like I said before the video, nobody else in that home is getting orbs on their cameras.
Right.
Even when her husband or her friend uses her phone to shoot video, they're not getting orbs. It's only when she turns on the video.
So, what is her like all around atmosphere in the house? Like, how does she feel? Because like I noticed a few things. I remember you sending it to the group a little while back. And my question was, well, does she know what's in the bathroom? Because I can definitely see something like they almost look like they're if you ever see like smaller fish, they kind of swarm together when there's like something else kind of in the vicinity. And it definitely kind of gave that impression that something like that was going on. And,
Right.
you know, how does she feel? Does she feel very at peace around them? Does she feel like, is there any anxiety or anything like that? Like, does she just feel fine? Like it's nothing. She's just aware that they're there now.
She really feels at peace. I mean,
Cool.
she feels like they are there to help and protect her.
Cool.
I mean, you heard her say that in the video. Thank you for being here. I mean, she's very appreciative. But again, nobody else is having this experience but her. And they're showing up on video, but not for anybody else. So it's kind of, and so to me, it's unusual because usually, excuse me, usually you get orbs by accident, right?
Mhm.
You don't, I mean, you can't just turn on a video and say, I'm going to record orbs, but she can. She turns it on and it's like, I'm going to record the orbs. And there they go. So uh, I hope you enjoyed that. We'll, when I get a chance, when I get back home, we'll upload those to the Patreon page so that if you are Patreon members, you can view that one. And there's like 4 or 5 other videos that she sent me and gave me permission to share those. And see if anybody can give her a little more insight. Like I said, she's comfortable in the fact that they may be fairies, but she's also open to whatever, you know. And Andrea, if you think you saw something else in the video, it might be something else to talk about.
Okay.
But guys, we had set aside day today. What we set this show up like 6 months ago
Right.
to talk about MUFON. And we were trying, yep, that right there. We were trying to get someone from MUFON and to come on the air with us. And I got a hold of somebody at the Alabama MUFON chapter. I say I got a hold of somebody. I sent them a message, and they responded with an appointment calendar for today at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. So I don't know what that means. I never got a message from anybody. And then Tim tried to contact them when this came up with my son. Tim tried to contact them and never heard back from them. Right?
Right.
We didn't hear back from anybody.
Yeah, I know y'all were trying to get a hold of somebody too. And so we're just gonna go on. I mean, y'all know we just go on anyway. I mean, I remember when Tim and I did the Bigfoot stories, and our special guest had a family emergency come up right before the show and couldn't be there. So Tim and I just talked about Bigfoot stories and played the Patterson Gimlin film over and over again. Because we didn't know what else.
I think we watched it like 20 times on that episode alone. So,
All right. Now I have my outline, but it's hard for me to read. So somebody tell us. We're talking about MUFON today, the Mutual UFO Network. Somebody tell us a little bit about MUFON.
all right. So MUFON is actually the world's oldest and largest civilian UFO investigation and research organization. Their goal is to be inquisitive when it comes to seeking answers for the most ancient questions. Are we alone in the universe? The answer is very simply is a no, according to them. Whether you have a UFO sighting to report or to share, you're an armchair UFO investigator, or you want to join and train with their investigation teams, MUFON is available for you. They are spread out throughout the world at this point in time. They started in 1969 as the Midwest UFO Network. What happens though is that as they continue to grow in more places like New York, Alabama, North Carolina, and I believe New Mexico being among the first ones to join them, they actually changed it to the Mutual UFO Network at that point. Interestingly enough, the group starts right at about the same time the government is doing Project Blue Book. and they're out there investigating on their own. Their own investigator for the government is saying that there are no UFOs. It's all a hoax. There's nothing to worry about.
Yeah. Now, they weren't involved with Blue Book, though, were they?
No, they were not.
Okay,
So,
we all know J. Allen Hynek was
right.
in Blue Book. Did he eventually come to work with or alongside of MUFON at some point?
Yes. He is listed as one of the directors of MUFON in the mid 70s. So he actually takes over at one point to lead them and is now saying, oh, you know what? I'm going to backtrack on my statements. There really are UFOs. And here for the government, he'd been like, nope, nothing existing. We're already seeing, though, in the last few years, that the government is retracting all of those statements and is saying,
Right.
wait a second, maybe there's something else out there that is not of Earth. In fact, what was it the Pentagon said less than 2 months ago, that we have unidentified flying objects in our atmosphere not built on the planet Earth.
Well, I wanted to talk about the recent disclosure from yesterday.
Right.
We'll talk about that later on in the show. I hope some of y'all's read it because I was trying to read it on my phone and I was just having a tough time. So I hope somebody's read it and can give us a synopsis of it. But so they were started basically about the same time as Project Blue Book. So they ran concurrently, and MUFON continues. Well, that's the thing. It's a civilian organization. That's what I want everybody to get across. This was not sanctioned by the government. The government is not controlling them in any way. So everything MUFON does is MUFON.
Right. Now, I did get an email from the Kansas chapter of MUFON. They did not have anybody that could join us, but they gave me some odd facts about MUFON because it starts in the Midwest.
Really?
Missouri, Kansas,
Yep.
Oklahoma, Iowa are some of the original states that are involved. In Kansas, when they started, there were things that were not allowed. You were not allowed to call MUFON and say that you had seen a UFO while your neighbor was harvesting their grain, because too often there were people calling in saying they were seeing a UFO and it was a combine going through a field.
Oh.
They also had a limit in Kansas as to how many times people could call to report a UFO. Once per month.
Once a month.
Once a month, huh?
Once a month.
Apparently, there were a lot of those kind of people.
That may say something about Kansas farmers in the 60s.
This month, you'll have to wait a few weeks.
Right.
Oh, that's great. What, I mean, they had other guidelines?
Those were two of the ones that were just bizarre, that were like out there a little ways. I'm like, but having lived in Kansas long enough and seeing people out with their combines in the middle of the night, 2, 3 in the morning, and they're trying to get their grain and their harvest in, you can understand why somebody might think that's a UFO going through a field.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you'd think, if I was raised in Kansas, they'd know what a combine looks like and sounds like.
You would think so. But
well, they limit people on only calling so often. So, maybe they don't remember what a combine looks like. Maybe there's just something going on there.
But if you think about it, what was the show years ago, Newhart, where George sees a UFO and they're talking about the guy, Crazy Willie or whatever his name is. I don't remember what the guy's name is, who in like a year and a half had called the local MUFON organization with 127 reports of UFOs. So,
I just keep thinking of the dad from Independence Day, the one that was like,
right.
Everything.
Yeah, exactly. Everything's a UFO.
If you see something, don't say something.
or only say something once a month.
Yeah. If you see something, say something once a month.
Right.
Or try to find an explanation before you say something.
that would be thankful.
I just think of that poor farmer out there standing below a building-sized UFO that is just like eclipsing the sun and going, wow, I already called once this month. I've
already used my monthly allotment.
Yeah, exactly. So they eliminated that rule at some point. They did send me, and we'll talk about it. One investigation that they finalized here recently, and we'll talk about that investigation here in a little bit. Um,
I'm sorry, something popped up I had to deal with. All
oh
right.
no, that's all right. So we do have one investigation that MUFON has finalized in the last few months at the Kansas side, and we'll talk about that investigation. I've got a photo picture that was taken of this particular UFO to show as well.
Nice. Well, let's go over just some of the other stuff that MUFON does. They well, he says currently the oldest and largest UFO organization. They have my phone keeps buzzing and falling off. I don't even have a cell phone holder. Let's see. They do a MUFON journal. They hold an annual UFO symposium.
Right.
They have a membership of over 4,000. And I'm wanting to join. I just haven't been able to yet, but I will be joining soon because I found out that's the only way you can access their history and investigations is if you're a member. But they have. Oh, good night. It keeps buzzing. Well, I tried to.
It's just the government. They don't want you talking about this stuff.
I guess so.
I know, Tom.
All right, they have a computerized UFO case management system. We get this with over 100,000 UFO cases. Wow. They have a structured field investigator training program. How many of you thought about doing that for them before? Anyway, they have they have more than 600 active field investigators. They have a nationwide response team for high value investigations known as the STAR team. And this was something I didn't know until I came across it in research. They have a trained underwater dive team. I guess looking for USOs, I guess.
Well, there's been a lot of sightings lately of UFOs above the oceans, like near Hawaii, and off our coast, where they're actually going into the water or coming out of the water.
Exactly.
So they may
And
need a dive team.
Here in Georgia, well, in LaGrange, we're located right next to West Point Lake, and many of the UFO reports in this area center on the lake, and there is some belief that there's some type of underwater UFO base or something, but certainly that might be useful if you're trying to find out what is going on with all of these UFOs centering themselves on this lake.
Yeah. Maybe I can send the dive team in there. That would be cool. Let's see what you find. And how many of you have seen the History Channel TV show called Hangar One? That's a MUFON show. I didn't realize that. Cool. And once you become a member, you can sign up to their MUFON TV. But anyway, that's just a brief overview of the organization. Huh?
I said you just sold it. I was like, I'm now really intrigued. I'm like, I think I might go and see about becoming a member.
Yeah, I want to. I've looked into it. And yeah, Lynn said Andrew will be signed up next week. But there's no cryptids. They don't do cryptids. So that might lose Andrea there.
Right, because she won't be able to take any home as pets.
She has a stuffed animal cryptid collection, and she wants to add an alien to it.
I do. So it can technically be a cryptid, I mean, it depends on what your thought process is on what aliens are. So
all right, I had put it in the notes, but I forgot to put it in the outline. J. Allen Hynek set up the 4 levels of contact, and and then somebody else added a couple more. Does somebody have that list? I know it was on Wikipedia, the close encounter of the first kind, second kind, third kind, which was made famous by the movie, and that's why people know about the classification, the contact classification, because of the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But I think Close Encounters of the First Kind is just visually seeing something, correct?
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had that list.
You've got a total of 7 of them. Your first one is going to be just seeing something. I'm trying to remember where they are. Yeah, just a sighting of some kind of a flying object. The second is which a UFO is spotted, but the associated phenomenon accompanies it. So things such as crop circles, terrain damage, large number of animals dying, some kind of electrical or magnetic interference that is going on. Close encounters of the third kind being a UFO being spotted, but going further to visual confirmation of an animate object associated with the UFO, similar to what you see in that movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The fourth kind is somebody being abducted by an alien, by an extraterrestrial. Fifth kind is bilateral communication with an extraterrestrial entity where there's some kind of communication, whether it's telepathic, mental, or verbal, that is happening between both the humans and the aliens. Then you have the sixth kind, which involves a USO or its inhabitants causing injury or death to a human, which is kind of an interesting one. And then, of course, you have the seventh kind, which would actually be human and extraterrestrial mate to produce an offspring being that becomes a hybrid. We talked a little bit about that with the Bridgewater Triangle, and the lady saying that they were stealing their eggs to produce a alien breeding program.
Yeah, I remember that. And y'all just take a time out real quick and look at Lewis. Isn't that just the coolest picture? I mean, he looks so ominous and powerful with it's like he's on a throne right there with his 2 lights beside him. That is so cool.
Thank you.
You need a snapshot. That just makes you look so ominous and all powerful.
The laugh adds to it. There you go.
You just need to go like this. That'll seal it in.
Yeah,
there we go.
there you go.
Look at that man, a white pussycat.
I'm sorry, I just had to pause for that. Thank you, Lou.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for providing our entertainment there for a moment. All right. Now, one of the two terms that came up in the research was a contactee and an experiencer. A contactee is a person who has been or is to be contacted specifically, one who claims to have been contacted by a being from outer space. That's actually from the Merriam-Webster edition of the dictionary. I mean, they put in there somebody who has been contacted by a being from outer space. If you can believe Merriam-Webster would actually put that in there, but I guess they have to.
Muted.
Tom, we lost you.
He's got a phone call coming in. You can keep hearing the phone buzz. So something's going on there in the background. Tom, he just said he'll be right back.
Okay.
So, great. So not a problem at all. Now, I know last week as we were talking about the Bridgewater Triangle, Jonathan mentioned something about the difference of shapes of UFOs. I don't remember if you remember talking about that at all or not. That over time.
Oh yeah, they seem to be related to the time period in which they were witnessed. So you had a time when everything was a disc, and then a time when everything was like cigar shaped, and then so on and so forth.
Right. And it's interesting because Tom pulled up the research on that. And of course, flying saucers begin about the 1940s. flying triangles about the 1990s. Tic Tac shape. Now I don't. I was thinking, long cylinders, about 2004, square or cubist shapes or clouds within the last about 10 years, beginning about 2010. And so it's a question of whether or not maybe the vessels are changing shape, or maybe the way that we perceive what's going on is causing a change. I know that when you deal with paranormal on the ghost side, sometimes you run into stories changing over time based on whatever the popular culture is.
You know, my dad, he'd be so like mortified, that I brought him up in this. He's had 2 UFO sightings that he loves to talk about, though. But
Right.
one was in the 90s, and that was the typical triangle, sighting he saw. And then one was around 2004, was when he was on Patricia, and it was in the Tic Tac form. So to say, it had the lights on it and everything, but it was more in that like Tic Tac, Zeppelin sort of shaped UFO. But that's pretty interesting. The time frame actually fits both of those crafts and styles.
And even of the stories from here in my hometown, the earliest story is 1938, and a gentleman sees the classic UFO, the flying saucer disc-shaped object with the portholes all the way around the side. And then moving on up, one of the more recent sightings, which was 2016 and reported to MUFON, involved a kind of a pearlescent craft that was roundish, kind of shaped like a nut, I think, that was just kind of hovering over a road, and actually just kind of this driver is able to follow it as he drives down the road, and it just kind of hovers right next to the road. So even from the experiences here in West Georgia, you can see that definite evolution in the crafts.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
Sometimes you fit like a nut, sometimes you're not.
Yes. And hopefully no one will think you're a nut.
There you go.
it's interesting. We tend to think of extraterrestrials as being so far technologically advanced from us, and somehow we assign to that like a fixed point in technology, and
Right.
we would think, well, their technology is never going to advance, but their technology may advance in ways that we're not even capable of thinking of, honestly.
Exactly.
So to think that a technological advancement of any kind is going to sit still is flawed to begin with. And right now we have oh man, of course, now I forget the name of the law that basically says that every year or every 10 years, our technological ability would double.
Right.
And so that's based on where we currently are with the technology that we currently have. And so if you have somebody that has something, some kind of a technological paradigm that goes beyond that, well, who knows how quickly their technology could advance. And we're talking about a span of possibly 100 years at least.
Yeah. Well, I added this thing about the different shapes into the outline because of watching you guys on the Bridgewater show 2 weeks ago. There goes Woody Woodpecker somewhere.
It's a bird clock.
Filming his clock. But anyway, I mean, it has, where there were the classic saucer shapes and then the triangle shapes and the Tic Tacs. And I don't know, do y'all remember when we talked about the first of the year, my father-in-law and what he saw?
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I guess that would go into the TikTok shape. And then Tim
The flying
found this.
wing.
Yeah, something like that. But Tim found this that an astronaut had seen. But I came across this just today. Now, you might not be able to see it too well because they got like 100 things jammed into one. But this is some of the basic UFO shapes.
Yeah.
Can you see that? UFO sightings, and I think
Right.
that one says set 1.
Right.
So
Set 1 of 500.
probably. But you got your triangles, you got your saucers, There's all kind of stuff on that. It may be a cigar shape, because that's one I didn't add on, because I remember back in the 80s or 90s they were seeing a lot of cigar shapes.
Those go back all the way into the 70s, because that's the one that my father remembers seeing going over the top of him at about the same time period that Travis Walters is kidnapped. Within about the same couple of days, he remembers something large and cigar shaped going over the top of him, and he was only about 15 miles from where Travis was kidnapped.
Right.
Hmm.
Well, see excuse me, we talked about Travis Walton and then the Pascagoula abduction, or abduction show,
Right.
and they really just saw an orb of light.
Right.
They didn't really describe a craft, and the movie, I think it's called Paranormal Encounters, the Pascagoula UFO incident, with all the witnesses that they found, all they saw was a bright blue light, or in some cases an orange light. So I know that's happened a lot at Skinwalker Ranch. They'll see these orbs, bright blue and orange orbs.
Right.
So who knows? And then you got the Foo Fighters from World War II, which was basically just an orb of light. They never saw craft at all. But anyway, Lewis, you didn't share yours earlier, did you?
No.
Okay, good. Because you mentioned one a minute ago, and then about the lake, I was like, I hope he has not already shared that. So
No.
you got some from Troup County, Georgia, and one was
Yes.
actually investigated by MUFON and Blue Book.
Well, it was investigated by Blue Book, and of course, we didn't actually know that this had actually happened until just a few years ago when they released all of that material. And it just happened that someone here in the Historical Society came across this information and gave it to me. And the incident took place in 1966. It interestingly happened in the early morning hours of April 1st, so April Fool's Day. But it was about 15 college students at LaGrange College, which is located just south of downtown. And the college is located up on a hill. So these students were standing outside of one of the dormitories, and the report actually describes that you can see, standing in front of this dormitory, you can see over the trees comprising the southwest portion of the city. And so these students were out there late at night, and about 12:30 they look up and see 3 points of light in the sky, and the 3 points remain in the same general vicinity of the sky, but they're moving erratically around. And as they're moving, they're changing color. So these students watched these lights for more than an hour and a half. And one of the students also was I guess maybe an intern or worked part-time for the local newspaper. And he started to he got really curious as to what they were seeing. So he started contacting local airports. We have an airport here. He contacted them. He contacted the airport north of us in Coweta County in Newnan. And he was not able to get any answers as to whether or not there were planes flying over the city. So he went ahead and contacted the Air Force Base in Warner Robins, Georgia, and eventually worked his way up to speak to the commandant of that base. And the commandant was able to tell him, we have no record of military activity over the town, so we're not sure what you're looking at. The commandant thought this was important enough to go ahead and call up to the Pentagon and report this. And
Wow.
so this investigation was initiated specifically by him, and they sent investigators down to LaGrange who met with the college students and discovered that the college students were credible. They evidently weren't drinking or smoking or doing anything illegal, and the report reads that they're totally unsure as to what it was these kids were seeing, and that they were possibly seeing alien spacecraft. But this story is very interesting, given that this area has had a fairly long history with UFO activity.
Really?
Like I said, it started out, the first sighting that we know of happened in 1938, and then it progressed on. There was a significant sighting in 1952, where a roofer in a nearby county. Oh, were you saying something, Tom?
1948?
1952.
Okay, I thought you said 1948, then 1952.
Oh, 1938 was the first sighting. Yes.
My bad.
Yes.
Well, you know
And
where my
then-
brain went with a UFO sighting at 48. I was like 47, 48, somewhere in there. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry to have interrupted your train of thought.
Oh, no problem. No
We
problem.
can get back on track now.
But then 1952, a roofer in a small community in the county is out working on a roof and hears all of this commotion, looks up, and there is this huge craft hovering over a neighboring field. And the craft is hovering over the field, shining a light down on the field. And so this guy watches it, and eventually it takes off vertically. And he said that he watched it as it took off, and it took off so fast that within 2 minutes of the takeoff, all he could see was just a pinpoint of light in the sky.
Wow.
And the next day, he's again working on this roof and hears all this commotion, and all of these military helicopters show up and they're circling the field. Some soldiers actually got off and they looked around in the field. And then after they left, the roofer gathered some of his buddies and they went up to this field to discover there was a huge burn mark in the grass where the craft had been shooting this light down.
Wow.
And that's 1952. And then moving up into the 60s, 1963, a housewife located just down the street from our town square, she goes out on her porch one evening, and her house backed up to a set of railroad tracks. And she looks up and sees a craft she described as being the size of a football field, hovering over the railroad tracks, about 20 feet above the tracks. And not 2 months later, there is another report, this time from a railroad employee who happened to be on a train on the same stretch of railroad tracks. And again, he looks up and the train is passing underneath this huge craft.
Wow.
So then there was 1966, and you have the incident investigated by Project Blue Book. And then in the mid 1990s, this area became a hotspot for UFO activity. And for approximately 3 years, or over the course of 3 years, there were nearly 150 separate UFO reports from the county. And this area was named I think by MUFON as the troop herd corridor for troop and herd counties where the bulk of these incidents took place. And on my ghost tour, I talk about this, but I had a gentleman who had managed the local airport during that time, and he said nearly every week they would have at least 4 or 5 calls to the airport asking about UFO activity or asking if there were flights over the town, and or people wanting to call in and report that I just saw a UFO and didn't know who to call, so they called the airport. But like I said, there was an incident in 2016 that actually happened on the road that I live on, and in talking about this, telling this story on my tour, I had a gentleman who claimed to have an almost exactly similar experience where he sees a UFO as he's driving down this road. He saw it at the same exact intersection where the MUFON report happened, and he followed it, but this time he was not able to keep up with the craft as he drove down the road. He eventually lost sight of it, but then he was able to pick it up again later when he drove, pulled off of the road and took another road heading towards the lake. He was able to follow it down that road, and after about 2 miles, it took off at a high rate of speed and vanished somewhere over the lake.
Wow, that is so cool.
Yes, and interestingly,
on your road where you live.
Well, that road is. I live on that road. I haven't had any experiences out there, but yeah, I keep looking for them though. Every time I drive home at night, I keep my eye on the sky and hope that maybe something will appear.
Yes, yes. All right, Tim, we've neglected some comments over here. Can you go through those real quick?
I have actually been in contact. Greg is out there enjoying the show at the moment. He's eating gummy bears while he listens to us, and Airheads apparently said that Lewis has got some great stories.
Yes.
So yeah, I've been contacting him as go. You've got Beth out there saying UFOs, with an exclamation point. So.
All right. Well, like I say, guys, I'm on my phone, so I don't have it on my. When I'm at home on a computer, it'll pop up and tell me I've got a comment.
Right.
And it's not doing that for me on my phone. So I apologize for not being on top of it. Tim, thank you for staying on top of that. But Lewis, those are some awesome stories. Did you have some more?
Well, I was going to mention something else.
Because I know Tim's got some.
Well, go ahead, Tim. I'll hopefully remember mine.
Jonathan, Andrew, do y'all have some stories?
Do we? Actually, we have one.
Okay.
We just want. We have one personal story. Are you wanting a personal story, or are you wanting? I mean, I have a couple others that I know that are local to Ohio.
Yeah,
but I do have
looking at MUFON stories. It reminds me, y'all did talk about your cumulus clouds last week. I wondered, since that's an unidentified aerial phenomena, if that would fall under this heading today.
It does. In fact, we were just talking about that when we were talking about the shapes of the crafts. Is that since about 2010, you wind up with ones that are square and cloud shaped.
Cumulus.
So
resistance is futile.
Right, exactly. The Borg have arrived on Earth. We knew they were coming.
It was just mind blowing. I mean, it didn't change its shape for hours. Right. It stayed a square in the sky. All the other clouds were passing on by, and that one hadn't shifted at all. And even when the sun was starting to set around 9 o'clock at night, you could still see it out in the distance.
Yeah, those
That's
pictures were amazing.
Cumulus cloud. I guess technically we have two.
Yeah, technically, I guess now we have two of them. The
What?
other one that we
What do you mean?
have, what now? I'm sorry, Tom.
Oh, you have two of what?
We do
Two
have
stories.
two stories. We have the
Oh,
cumulus cloud, but we
the
do have a
cumulus
personal
cloud.
one. It was the weirdest thing, and all I can say is we were young and dumb and didn't think to contact anyone, but we were also kind of advised to leave it alone.
Yeah.
So it was in 2002, and he worked third shift at the airport, and I would go and stay the night with my grandma when he would leave, because honestly our apartment was haunted and I didn't like staying there by myself. And so that's the truth of it all. And we were starting to get some really questionable management had changed, and we were starting to get some really questionable tenants on top of it. So I just didn't feel safe in the apartment or even outside of the apartment there. And so I would stay the night at my grandma's house, and she lived in Belmont area, which is close to downtown Dayton, and it's about 25 minutes or less to Wright Pat Air Force Base. So I was upstairs asleep, and I was awoken by the entire house shaking. So it's an old 1920s house, and it's shaking. The windows are shaking, the floor is shaking, the bed is shaking. It felt like there was an earthquake. I hop out of bed, run out of the room into where my grandma lives. Like, Grandma, do you feel that? The house is shaking. In the weirdest voice, she told me, leave it alone. And my grandmother is not like that. She normally would have been up with me. Not leaving this alone. It shakes again. It's not a consistent shaking. It starts shaking again. Grandma sleeps right through it. I look at the time, 2 a.m., thereabouts. I run outside to see what's going on because, brilliance is apparently my middle name. And I wanted to see what was causing the shaking. And I go outside off the front porch, and you can hear two single engine aircrafts. They were jets flying so low in this normal neighborhood that they were at the air show level. You could see the cockpit and everything.
Wow.
And they were crossing and flying in different directions and definitely coming low, going straight out.
2 in the morning.
2 in the morning. Nobody else is out there. Nobody else has left their house. I remember when 9/11 happened, we had two jets that took off from Wright Pat going to New York, and we had sonic booms. I had never heard one before in my life. I go outside. Everybody in the neighborhood was outside to see what caused those booms because we were all on high alert at that time. Nobody was coming outside, and these things were low, and they were shaking the house. I go inside and grab my phone, and I call him. And I go back outside. I wait. I wasn't on the. Was I on the phone with you when I saw it? So I was on the phone. I go outside. I'm talking to him. I'm panicked. He gets in the car, and as he's getting ready to leave, this very odd hum. And the only way I can describe this hum is it was more of something you could feel in your chest than hear with your ears. Kind of starts to resonate in the air. And I'm on the sidewalk, and I look up, and up above me is a craft. And it's kind of triangular shape. There were 3 lights kind of at each point. And the oddest thing about it is I felt like I could almost sort of see through it. Like you could almost see the sky through it, but you could see the outline of it. I know it sounds very odd, but I'm on the phone. Oh my godding. While I'm seeing this, I run and hide under a tree because that's going to keep me safe. And the aircrafts are still flying around this thing, and it's moving fairly slow, and it is heading towards Wright Pat, and it is very, very low, maybe 50 feet from the rooftops of these old houses.
So that was our jets flying around it.
They were flying around. He gets on the highway.
So my side of the story is we'll go all the way back to where I was at work, and they called, and or she called, and the people I was working with were like, "Hey, your wife's on the phone." So I go and I pick up the phone, and on the office phone, she's telling me there are jets here flying over Belmont, and they are so low that I can see the pilots in the cockpit, and they are shaking the windows, and I hear through the receiver the sound of these jets as they're going over and then retreating and then going over and retreating. And I didn't know what was going on. And so I was like, all right, I'll be there. I get in my car, I tell everybody I'm leaving, call off the rest of the night, and I drive. I work about 30 to 45 minutes away from where she was. And so I immediately, either she calls me back or I call her back. I can't remember who called who, but this is during the time period when I had I either had my Motorola Razor or my Sony Ericsson. I can't remember which one I had at that time, but I had my little handheld feature phone. And she was talking to me, and that's when she got really panicked in her voice and was telling me something's not right. I see something, and she was describing to me what she was seeing.
Wow.
And I said, this is not good. This is crazy. And as I got onto the highway actually kind of raises up so that you can see out over Dayton. And I'm talking to her on the phone, and I see the jets. And I see there are two of them. There's one that's very high up in the sky as the other one is flying low over this Belmont area. And then that other one would come up and the other one would come down and circle over. It was almost like they continually wanted to have one plane flying very low over this area. And I knew it would, I would say from where I was, vantage point wise, I'm thinking around 100 to 150 feet.
They were. It's like if you went to the air show and they do the flybys, then makes everybody's hair kind of move. They're very low.
I had never seen anything like this. Now this is like 2:30 in the morning by this time, something like that. I would hear on the phone the planes as they went over, and I had her describing this to him, and I remember being conflicted. Like, I'm driving, I want to take a picture of this thing with my phone, but I'm far enough away that it's not going to be a good picture, and I don't want to let her go on the phone. So
it was, and still, nobody came outside. And I will tell you something about me personally. I do not react well to like general anesthesia or like lidocaine or anything like that. I'm not, I guess I'm overly tolerant. I don't know. Like, it wears off on me. It does not last, or it doesn't even take sometimes. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but my grandma, she did not get up, and she would have at any other normal state would have gotten up with me. I mean, that was just her. She had a great hunky-dory, easygoing personality, and she never would have looked at me, or she didn't even look at me. She didn't even open her eyes. She just said, "Go back to bed. It's nothing. Go back to bed." And she was so harsh about it that I was just like, okay, well, no.
There's nothing to see here. There's nothing to see here.
Yeah.
So they were definitely single-engine jets. They looked to me like F-16s. I know that we have F-16s at Wright Pat. But to me, the strangest thing about it came the next day when she approached her grandma about it. She said, "Oh, I saw there's an article about what you saw."
It was in the newspaper.
It was in the newspaper, the Dayton Daily News. It was British planes who were coming over here from Britain, and they couldn't find the Air Force.
They got lost.
They got lost and couldn't find the Air Force base.
And I said to Grandma, I said, "Oh, I don't know about that. I think I'm going to call, and I think I'm going to call somebody." And she said, "I'd rather you leave it alone."
Ooh.
And I just never, okay.
Since that time period, I have scoured every archive of newspapers in this area looking for anything with the keywords of planes or British or anything like that. And I've done it on multiple occasions, and I can't find any article that references anything around that time period or talks about anything having happened.
And I hate that nobody else was outside. I really, really wish that somebody else saw it,
Yeah.
with me.
Well, John, when you were driving in, is all you saw the jets, or did you see the other craft?
I did not see any craft. All I
I
saw
know
were
the
the
jets,
jets.
right?
All I saw were the jets. I was a lot further away, and
It was kind of invisible.
and she had described it to me actually before I was to that point on the highway. By the time I had gotten to the point where I was seeing the jets, she was saying, it seems like these things are looking for this, or they're doing something,
Following it,
or escorting it, or looking for it, or something, because they keep going into this same area. But by the time I had gotten there, the planes were gone, everything was gone, and I spent the rest of the night sitting there with her talking.
I sat on the front porch for a long time. I just was trying to process what I had seen, and I'm not a panicker. I'm not one that usually when things happen, they tend to go very slow for me, so I can handle the situation. I panic later. I have to process it later. And in that situation, like, I can still vividly remember all of it because I didn't really run around like a crazy lady. I was, trying to think about it. The only thing I regret is, I feel so silly that I actually went and stood next to this tree on the side of the sidewalk there, thinking that I was hidden from this huge thing in the sky. But that's the only thing I can say that was kind of silly. I wish I would have reported it, but Grandma was just like, I really wish you would leave it alone.
Yeah.
So we did.
Andrea has seen this craft. She's seen fairies, and I think, John, she took you to see the fairies too, didn't she?
And here's the thing. I'm always so close to seeing these things. Like, I'm right there. I know something's going on because I see the planes. Okay, that's not normal. Something's up. But I just missed. I didn't see a craft.
Well, I was just going through, and just about every show we've done, Andrea has had personal sightings of just about every single one.
I haven't seen a Bigfoot. I'm really glad about that. I'm like,
trying to push her. She's like the chum in the water that I can throw out there to get all kinds of cool stuff coming our way. But I don't.
I know. Well, I think I said one time on one of the shows, like, I have like kind of a story for everything, but I swear it's not. It is 100% real. I am not like the world's biggest BSer or anything like that. Like, I really have had these.
There's a reason she likes this show.
She had the Black Hat Man story. You had, remember?
I had the doppelganger, which he was the doppelganger.
That's right.
And I had a witness.
Yeah.
The phantom phone call.
Phone call.
Just about every show.
That is, by the way, the same grandma that told her not to report the extraterrestrial thing.
Oh, wow.
And I had witnesses for that one. So I at least say I can have witnesses for all of these things generally, where people are like, oh yeah, I was there.
Well, I think I figured out what it is. Andrea shows up on the shows that she's had an experience and a sighting of. That's what it is.
That's not true. I did have an experience with Lizzie Borden. I have not been axed. So, nor have I axed anybody. You show up, you have no head.
Okay. Oops, my phone fell again. All right. Tim, I think, Tim, you had some stories, didn't you?
This is actually the one that was sent to me by Kansas MUFON. They actually sent me a link to this particular page. And if you look at the picture, the very top of the picture, on the upper left-hand side, there is a triangle-shaped craft that is in the air. It has 3 white lights and 3 red lights. This was seen on July 29, 2018 in Heston, Kansas, which is just a few miles north of Wichita. It's one of the reasons why you've got that nice big parking lot. It's actually one of the suburbs of Wichita that is there. The witness to it said that he noticed lights coming into view out of the driver's side window of his car. He spent a few minutes trying to figure out what it was. He said it was traveling at approximately 5 knots. I looked that up. It's 5 miles per hour, basically. So it's coming really slow, whatever it is. He says a couple of the lightning flashes in the sky from the distance showed it to be a triangular shape with no facets or edge differences on any of the three sides, three straight lines only. It continued to follow the path of the storm until its view was obstructed by the parking lot lights. Moved slowly in a straight line the entire time. He said at first he thought it was one of those life flight helicopters out of Wichita. But seeing the triangular shape, he said that couldn't be it. He was within 500 feet of this at one point. He said it was about 500 feet above the ground as it went over the top of him. So it wasn't very far away at all. He said when it went over the top, there was no sound whatsoever. MUFON spent 2 years investigating this, and in fact, the Kansas director Stan Sebeck closed the case saying dark triangular object that reflected all light appeared to be solid and had an outline. The surface was dark with no structural features. Actual size is indeterminable. The object had white lights and one red light in the very center with dark surfaces. The exterior lights were unwavering, meaning unblinking. I had to figure out what they meant by that. The elevation was approximately 500 feet above the ground, was seen from approximately a mile away to approximately 501 feet away. You have to remember, he said that it went over the top of him at about 500 feet. Now, in the comments, they made somebody made a suggestion that it was actually one of the TR-3B crafts. If you're not familiar with them, those are those triangular shaped aircraft that are now being built here in Kansas. Most people don't know that. They're a fighter plane is what they are. So it's questionable. I know that my wife had an experience with one of these a few years ago. She was outside in the pool, the plane itself. When it went over, it was probably about 500 feet in the air and made no sound whatsoever as it went over the top of the house and So,
But
so
you know
my
that
thought
was a plane.
what's that?
You know that was a plane.
We know for sure the one that went over the house was a plane. I mean, there's no question that it was a plane, but it's like, well, are they flying? The actual person that saw it said that a plane would not be 500 feet above the ground, that they wouldn't be flying that close. Um, Being as close to Wright Patterson as you all are, they do what they call map of the Earth, where they're as close to the surface as they can get that thing flying across the ground. But even MUFON is saying, here, we know it's a triangular shaped object. We don't know what it is for sure, but it's some kind of triangular shaped flying object that is above the ground that went over the city.
Look at, we just got a comment.
That is awesome.
That's perfect.
Polar Nights, you are amazing.
You gotta switch each other's spots so that it can just go in a clockwise motion.
Yeah.
Right.
That's probably one of the greatest comments we've ever had. Polar Nights, hey, thank you for watching on Twitch. There'll be more beards in 2 weeks because we do this every 2 weeks. But thank you for watching on Twitch. The perfect Helen. Finally, a OCD friendly podcast.
We don't want to admit it. We don't advertise it that way, but really, OCD does run probably.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We all have a touch somewhere along the line. That's why we do what we do. All right. Hey, listen, good evening from North Norway. No wonder you're called Polar Nights. So thank you for watching from Norway. I hope you're enjoying the show. We got some more stuff to talk about. Some more MUFON stories and a few others. I know I've got a couple that I couldn't really verify that they were investigated by MUFON. But Tim, did you have some more MUFON stories?
I did not.
You did not.
No, I did not. That was the only one they had sent me.
Okay. I came across this one a couple of months ago, and all I have, which if you guys have been able to do some follow-up research, let me know, because all I have is pictures of these documents that were redacted somewhat, but what was that? I'm having trouble reading it, guy, on my phone. Can somebody read that for me? I think it was in like 1954. Is that what it says?
1st of July, 1954. And it says brilliant silver colored, similar to jet AC, no discernible sound or trails, attention call to object due to extreme overall brilliance of the object. Mrs. Redacted reported observing the object make a 360 degree over the city of Mobile and disappear to the northeast. They reported seeing the object in the northeast quadrant only, and reported that the object was in sight for 60 seconds. And let's see, and then it goes on to say that this was at dusk. Something about Brookley Air Force Base in Pascagoula.
Brooklyn Air Force Base. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to take. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Polar Knights was asking about MUFON. So MUFON, yeah, is the Mutual UFO Network that we were talking about, and it's specifically dealing with things that we don't know what they are in the sky.
Yes, MUFON is a civic organization. They're not underwritten by the government or any government. They're the Mutual UFO Network, and we're highlighting them today. Let's say, Polar Knights, thank you for getting involved. We appreciate it. All right, here's the other piece of information on that same sighting. Now, this was at what used to be known as the Brooklyn Air Force Base in Mobile, Alabama. It says July the 1st. That other one had 1954, correct? Is that, I can't see it.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes.
Okay,
July 1st, 54.
See if this one has any more detail.
This says Brooklyn Air Force Base reported today that an unidentified flying object, brilliant and silver colored, was tracked by radar over Mobile and the Alabama-Mississippi Gulf Coast last night. Major James Ziccarelli, public information officer at Brooklyn, said the object appeared to be a jet-type aircraft of new design with short, sturdy wings.
Hello?
5 other residents of Alabama and Mississippi also reported sighting the object. He said radar operators reported that it made no sound and left no trail, but gave evidence of definitely being maneuvered. The object first was reported by a Mrs. Somebody. All right. I can't see it any longer. Oh, there. Mrs. Redacted of Mobile, and then someone in Pascagoula notified authorities that she had seen it at approximately 7 p.m. The object was tracked on the radar screen approaching Mobile from the southeast. After circling the city one time, it disappeared in a northeasterly direction, the officer said. The Air Force could give no explanation of the incident.
Don't you love that? No explanation. What is this? Oh. Yeah. All right. Okay, guys. There was one other I wanted to just touch on real quick, and this was actually a meme that was posted on Facebook. Where'd I put it? Where'd it go? The guy in Australia. In 1978, pilot Frederick Valentich and his plane disappeared in Australia. His last communication was, Melbourne, that strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. 2 seconds of open microphone. It is hovering and it is not an aircraft.
If I'm correct, I think that this may have been featured on Unsolved Mysteries. That sounds very familiar.
Yes. Probably so. I just found that on there. And then for fun, when the fish are thrown back by fishermen, do they swim around yelling about alien abductions to the other fishes?
Makes you wonder.
Yeah.
I like what Polar Nights had to say about how my grandfather did see a ball that looked like it was on fire entering the sea when he was out fishing in the 50s. And that kind of falls under, like, you know, right around that time frame, like that transition from saucers to triangles. He said it did not even make a ripple on the calm sea. Wow.
Wow, that is cool.
MUFON divers were needed.
Polar Nights. Yes, if you could, yeah, just email me there, tom@strangejourneys.live. It didn't even make a ripple on the calm sea. That is so cool. All right. Okay. Where we go next? I'm trying to keep up. Oh, we were talking about the cumulus clouds. I took this picture several years ago. What do y'all see in the background there? Anybody?
Is it that circle that's in the clouds there?
Yeah. Some people call it sky circles, sky cloud formations, but these have happened pretty regular over the city of Mobile, Alabama. And I was out taking pictures of that oak tree and realized after I'd snapped a few pictures that that was happening in the background. And it's an unusual anomaly that happens in the clouds. And on one of them that was taken over Mobile, and I couldn't find that picture, but there is a craft seen in the circle. So people are equating them at some point to the crop circles. So who knows? You know, if they're flying around up there, stuff is going to happen to the clouds, you know. So, all right. I wanted to, did anybody get a chance to read the disclosure from the government? Was there anything worth mentioning? Because I heard it was just a lot of, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. We need to investigate it deeper. In fact, one of the suggestions in that preliminary assessment is sent directly to the Senate, and they are asking for a large amount of money to be used to investigate whether or not these are earthly craft or whether they are something from extraterrestrial. It is basically what's going on. We can't get enough. What they're saying is there's not enough verifiable resources to tell them whether or not they're from here or from somewhere else.
They began the classification breakdown of how they would classify things as being either related to earthly stuff, other governments, equipment, and things like that. And then they have a big other bin that everything else would fall into.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really want to spend a whole lot of time discussing it. I mean, they did put this out, you know, Office of the Director of National Intelligence, which I've never even heard of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, but, you know, I could be, I don't know. I'm not an expert on government stuff. Preliminary assessment of unidentified aerial phenomena.
The important word there is the first word, preliminary. And it's an ask is what it is. It's a taste and an ask, and it's saying, hey, we'd like to look into some of this stuff. Here's our preliminary assessment. Why don't you pay for the assessment?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I do think it's very interesting that most recently, one of the big proponents of all of this has been former Senator Harry Reid of Nevada. And he has been behind a lot of this effort to declassify this stuff for the government and really start to look into it.
Yes, and it's amazing. But the thing that bugs me is it was this big build up, national, imminent disclosure day, and all this kind of, and boom, we get hit with, well, we don't know, we want to study it more.
Right.
After all the hype and all the build up, so. But one other thing before we close out today, we've obviously seen things in our skies. And one theory that is probably the most controversial, if you can add that word to the UFO field, is ancient aliens. And, are these beings that have been here before? And we're not going to delve into that other than I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, these ancient civilizations were either extremely, extremely more advanced than we are today, and some kind of cataclysm happened that destroyed their society and technology, and it was lost to time, or they had outside help. In my opinion, it can only be one of the two. Now, either one is fascinating. If they were so technologically advanced that they were flying and visiting other planets, the way it seems in the ancient writings and text, then I think that's just mind blowing. But if it wasn't them, then who was it? Outside help. And what's the Fermi paradox? Can anybody tell me the Fermi paradox when it comes to UFOs? With all the millions and billions and billions of planets out there, there is bound to be intelligent life somewhere, right? But the paradox comes in is, if there is, why haven't they made contact yet? And some people would say they have. So that's kind of my final thoughts. Anybody else have any final thoughts? We'll start with Lewis.
I think I'll just approve your thoughts.
All right, Jonathan.
Pass? No. My final thoughts are that this whole arena is something very interesting, and it's something that bears investigation.
Yes.
And as with all things, so you mentioned the buildup for the UAP report and things like that. I think some of what makes this great is the mystery and the mystique and the buildup. Sometimes when you're faced with the reality of things, it's a letdown. It's not what you were expecting, or it's not what you wanted. And it's a possibility that something like that could happen here. So, but either way, it's something that definitely captures the mind. It makes people very interested in these kind of things, and I love the inquisitive nature and the research that goes into it.
Yes. Next, Andrea.
I concur. And he just said it all. But I also, I think that we're so busy looking at the sky that we sometimes miss the possibility that our sightings may be more interdimensional rather than extraterrestrial. So I that's my only 2 cents that are into it. I kind of often wonder if we're just missing the mark, like we're right there, but we keep missing it, like just because we're expecting it from one spot. And I think that would kind of make sense on how some of these ancient civilizations came in contact with these these beings are, they definitely had a way with other dimensions. If you look into, their lore and religions. So could they have made contact with something intelligent on the other side, just in a different veil,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like Stranger Things, the Upside Down. So,
Yep. And Polar Nights pointed out something: 80% of the sea is not explored. Great place to hide.
very true.
Yep.
Very
Amen.
true.
We're going to need a bigger dive team.
I was going to point out another one of Polar Knight's comments here just a few minutes ago, where he said that, but if they're there, they can't be hostile. It feels more like that they're observing us, and that's kind of the way that I feel between the abductions and between. We don't have very many contacts that are verifiable. Maybe it is just one of those here. We're watching to see what you all are doing. Let's find out if it's really worth contacting you or not.
Maybe they have preliminary reports on their planet where they're like, you know what, we got to check out these humans, but we don't have the budget for it yet, so we're just doing a preliminary investigation.
Right.
Fishing, they like get one of us and they're like, oh, throw it back.
And what is this one? I stuck this in there. So why do you keep abducting and probing our people? And what did he say? I can't see it.
You sent us unsolicited nudes, a mixtape, and directions to your home.
Awesome.
Makes sense. Sorry, guys. Tim, take us out of here.
We'll see y'all later. Thanks for joining us.
Our closing video. Oh, wait a minute.
Is there anyone here with us? Did you hear that? Can you tell us your name?
Figure out something for supper.
Yeah, figure out something for supper. I meant to ask, what did y'all think of the new opening and closing videos?
They look great.
Really
All
good.
right, good. I'm glad. All right, guys, we're about 2 weeks out, and I wish I could tell you what the show was going to be, but I don't remember. And there we go again. But anyway, we are scheduled to be back in 2 weeks with another interesting show with stories, because we know that's what you like. And if you've got stories you want to give us, then send them our way. Tom@strangejourneys.live, or you can come to our Facebook page, or you can go to our YouTube page, strangejourneys.live. But make sure you like and subscribe. So we're going to see y'all in 2 weeks, okay? Thank y'all for watching.
Bye.
Bye all.